Welcome back to Canon Chaos, the only show where betrayal isn't a twist, it's a line item in the budget. Today's conspiracy-fueled calamity: what if the Jedi were behind Order 66? Not the Sith, not Palpatine, not some grand evil scheme from the shadows. No, because here's the truth the Holonet won't touch. Order 66 wasn't a coup. It was a cost-saving measure. The Jedi Order was too big, too old, and just too damn expensive to keep running. And when you can't fire your staff, and your pension plan's a ticking time bomb, sometimes you just gotta get creative. This is the story of Jedi austerity. This is the story of bureaucratic genocide. This is Canon Chaos. So you know the official version of this. Sifo Dyas, a Jedi Master, visionary, rogue, secretly commissions a clone army for the Republic. He dies mysteriously, and the Council pretends they're just as surprised as everyone else when it shows up 10 years later with perfect uniforms, loyalty chips, and branded gunships. But what if none of that was rogue behavior? What if Sifo Dyas didn't go behind the Council's back? What if he was sent? Because the Jedi don't just have a Sith problem, they have a staffing crisis. Too many Jedi. Too many old Jedi. Too many one-armed, force-winded, lightsaber-weary Jedi eligible for full temple benefits. And time? That wasn't thinning them out fast enough. Accidents was too rare. Instead, Jedi reflected. Healing was too advanced. And a peaceful galaxy? That's just terrible for our coffers. They needed a purge. Not a violent one, not openly. They just needed a logistical correction. Because the Jedi pension fund? That was emptier than Anakin's self-worth during group meditation. Council knew the numbers. They knew the lawsuits from angry parents claiming their kids were abducted. They knew that if they didn't slim down the ranks soon, they'd lose everything. Budget, legitimacy, galactic clout. So they greenlit a solution. A long game. A Jedi-sanctioned army. A Jedi-guided war. And buried inside it, a Jedi-written protocol designed to activate the moment the Order got too expensive to maintain. Order 66 wasn't an emergency plan, it was an exit strategy. The Jedi Order wasn't just losing control of the galaxy, they were losing control of their budget. On paper, they were defenders of peace. In reality, they were a bloated, tax-exempt nonprofit with lifetime members and no offboarding process. First problem, Jedi couldn't be fired. You take a 4-year-old, you hand them a laser sword, you train them to block bullets with their thoughts, and then what? You can't just say we're downsizing. You try laying off a monk who can throw you across the room with a blink. So they have to keep everyone, even the ones who stopped fighting, even the ones who weren't attuned to battle anymore but were still real enthusiastic about eating at the temple cafeteria twice a day and giving unasked for feedback during training sessions. The second problem is Jedi got old, and when they did, they didn't leave. They just rebranded. Suddenly they're not Jedi, they're senior force consultants, spiritual mentors, legacy wisdom contributors, which really meant they just sat on cushions, quoted Qui-Gon Jinn, and occasionally pointed at holomaps saying, darkness I sense. All while collecting a full stipend, force care benefits, and getting front row seating at every Jedi funeral they didn't die in. Third problem, liability. Turns out, when you abduct children in robes and call it destiny, parents don't always agree. Thousands of lawsuits poured in. Kidnapping, brainwashing, violation of planetary custody laws. One Togruta mother sued for emotional damages after the Jedi took her twins, kept one, and said the other didn't make the cut. She won. The courts didn't want to touch it. The Senate was useless, so the Council paid, over and over, quietly, out of the pension fund. By the time the Clone Wars began, the Jedi weren't just morally compromised, they were financially insolvent. So the High Council met. Quietly. No robes, no records, no droids in the room. Just 12 stressed out monks sitting in a circle, looking at a spreadsheet that might as well have been a war crime. And then they came up with a solution. Not wise, not noble, just efficient. Create an army, fund a war, blame the Sith, and use it to cull the Order. It wasn't about winning, it was about reducing headcount. Enter Sifo-Dyas. His mission? Publicly, to prepare for the coming conflict. Privately, to build a kill switch designed as patriotism. He commissions the Kaminoans. He says it's for the Republic. But buried in the fine print, written in Jedi legalese, translated 3 times through force-neutral arbitration clauses, is the real purpose. A controlled detonation of the Jedi Order. Every knight gets a squad, every master becomes a general. The clone troopers call them Sir. They salute, they obey, they build trust, loyalty, dependence. And in their brains, a trigger. Order 66. Pre-written, pre-programmed, approved by the Council Finance Subcommittee. Filed under Emergency Reorganization Authority. And here's the kicker, they wrote it. Mace Windu dictated the language, Yoda approved the contingency, and Ki-Adi made sure it qualified for a Republic budget carve-out. So when the time came, the clones didn't turn, they complied. So there were signs, literal ones, carved into clone training manuals, posted on Jedi Temple bulletin boards next to sandwich schedules and passive-aggressive notes from Yoda about meditation room hygiene. Order 1, deliver rations to Outer Rim relief zones. Order 6, dispose of communicator immediately following war crime. Order 42, replace lost Jedi hands. Optional, file for force-based ergonomic waiver. Order 66, terminate Jedi leadership under emergency protocol, disloyalty, dementia, or inefficient budgeting. Order 67, initiate synchronized dance routine with enemy combatants and immediately spot clean clone army using issued shame cloth. Nobody read the fine print. Because it wasn't in basic, it was buried in section 34 Gamma, right between approved fire drill chants and a seasonal color robe rotation. The kind of policy no one questions unless something catches fire or a Wookiee slips in the hallway. And the clones? They were trained to follow orders, not audit them. No one ever asked who wrote them. The Kaminoans don't care, the Republic didn't look, Jedi didn't admit, and the Senate, they were just thrilled someone else was paying for security. The brilliance wasn't in the code, it was in the anonymity. Because if Order 66 ever got used, the clones would fire, the Jedi would fall, and the Council could blame the Sith and walk away like it was all some cosmic misunderstanding. Worst case, dead. Best case, early retirement. And either way, our problems are solved. So, Palpatine thought he was playing 3-dimensional Djarik, Master of Shadows, Architect of the Clone Wars, pulling strings from behind the curtain. He thought he'd hijacked the clone protocols. He thought he'd tricked the Kaminoans, bypassed the Senate, outmaneuvered the Jedi. He thought Order 66 was his final act of brilliance, checkmate in 1,000 voices across the galaxy. But what he didn't realize is he didn't hijack a plan, he ran with it. Palpatine didn't invent Order 66. He thinks he's hijacked some rogue Jedi contingency. But the truth? The High Council put it there. He pressed the button, the Jedi Council fell. But for the Jedi Council, this wasn't a betrayal, it was just administration. Thousands of force-wielding liabilities gone overnight. No funerals, no pensions, no appeals, just a line in the ledger marked resolved. Windu doesn't flinch, Plo Koon doesn't scream, Ki-Adi-Mundi's last thought wasn't fear, it was, at least we came in under budget. And the galaxy was too shocked to question it. Palpatine got the credit, the Sith got the blame, but the Jedi got their books balanced. And nobody asked why the kill order used Jedi language, Jedi formatting, or the exact phrasing from a Jedi HR Temple directive on disciplinary disengagement procedures from problematic masters. Because war crimes are loud, but paperwork? Paperwork is silent. After the purge, the survivors scatter. Yoda goes into exile, Windu dies after falling out a window, but there was no body, no witness, just a suspicious lack of mention of activity. Obi-Wan vanishes into the sands of Tatooine, where no one delivers subpoenas unless they come on the back of a bantha and speak fluent dust. The galaxy thinks they're broken, defeated, hiding. But they're not hiding, they're auditing. Quietly, systemically. From shadow ports and forgotten relay stations, the remaining members of the High Council begin the real work, covering their tracks. They wipe holo records, torch mission logs, intercept death benefits. Yaddle's entire record is quietly reclassified as Force Intern. Yoda taps into this Temple's last financial database, bypasses the biometrics, and logs in under an old burner account. Swamp Daddy 42. He scrolls through the ledger, settlements paid, retirement stipends marked deceased, invalid forced disability claims, and a fraudulent expense report from Depa Bilaba marked luxury robes for outreach. He just deletes all of it. Windu, wherever he is, watches it happen and nods once. They know the truth. This wasn't failure. This was the cleanest exit in Jedi history. No one's left to testify. There's no paper trail. Just a galaxy that assumed the Jedi were wiped out by evil instead of strategically restructured due to budget shortfall. So, not every Jedi was in on this. The Order had layers, like a bureaucracy with lightsabers and a serious denial problem. Anakin, he was too unstable. He couldn't keep secret, couldn't sit still, and can't count to 10 without both his hands. At least one of those isn't factory original. Aayla Secura, Yoda and Mace never briefed her because, let's be honest, the High Council barely trusted her to read a spreadsheet without it becoming a calendar shoot. Sexist? Yes. Plo Koon believed in ethics. Actual, spoken out loud, space law ethics. Idiot. But the Inner Circle? They knew. Mace Windu drafted the language. Clinical, cold, completely deniable. Every clause vague enough to pass Senate review, but clear enough that a clone could follow it without blinking. Yoda negotiated the clone contracts. He said it was for the good of the Republic. What he meant was bulk discount for future executioners. Ki-Adi-Mundi approved the actuarial tables. He's a man with 5 wives and 17 dependents, knows how to budget for losses. He even saw Satan had a hand in it, literally. He wrote the clause defining combat-eligible Jedi in a way that just so happened to exclude every master ever over 65. Oh no, not the elderly Jedi. This wasn't a coup, it was a cleanse. And the ones who knew didn't blink, didn't confess, didn't flinch, because they didn't see it as betrayal. They saw it as retention control. Order 66 didn't end the Jedi, it restructured them. This wasn't extinction, it was a quiet pivot. The survivors didn't form a resistance, they formed a holding pattern. They waited for the coast to clear, the Empire to get bloated and sloppy, and then they re-emerged. New brand, new face, new fiscal model. Enter Luke Skywalker. Fresh-faced, naive, extremely marketable. The Council didn't just see him as hope, they saw him as overhead reduction. He worked miracles for exposure. No salary, no dental, no legal liabilities. And unlike Anakin, Luke didn't question leadership, he apologized to it. Meanwhile, the original council, still alive, still planning. Yoda pretended to live in a mud hut, but that wasn't exile. That was headquarters. His swamp shack was just the top layer of a Jedi downsizing facility buried under the Dagobah sludge, full of old robes, cut payroll, and an accounting terminal labeled Temple Operations 2.0. Obi-Wan filed for disability under the alias Old Ben. Reason listed, planet-induced burnout with force fatigue comorbidity. He got full benefits, free housing, and no follow-up. Windu claimed workers' comp for a fall injury sustained while intervening in a personnel dispute with upper management. None of them died, they just downsized, and handed the branding to a next-gen protagonist who worked cheap and didn't read the old budget memos. So, the Republic collapsed, the Empire took control, billions died, systems burned, democracy died to thunderous applause. But the Jedi? They balanced their books. They pulled off the greatest forced retirement in galactic history, trimmed a roster, cut liabilities, liquidated senior assets, and the best thing of all, there was no public backlash. Order 66 did what no audit, tribunal, or Senate budget hearing ever could. It solved the Jedi's long-term solvency crisis. Sure, yeah, it's gonna take a few years, a few decades to rebuild. Yeah, we do have to rebrand through a blonde farm boy with abandonment issues. And yeah, Yoda has to eat soup out of a log for 20 years. But in the end, it's worth it. The Jedi didn't go bankrupt, they got all of their real estate back, they reactivated their tax-exempt status, and by the time the sequel trilogy hit, they were financially stable, legally protected, and emotionally detached from the entire mess. Because that's the Jedi way. Not peace, not justice, but survivable austerity. So the next time you hear somebody say the Jedi were betrayed or Order 66 was the fall of the Guardians of Peace, just remember, it was a spreadsheet. The Jedi didn't get purged, they got streamlined. The clone army is a tax write-off. The war, a smokescreen. Palpatine, just a useful idiot who executed a pre-written expense reduction plan. And the survivors, they lived. They laundered the brand through Luke Skywalker, and when the time was right, they reappeared with better robes, fewer rules, and zero financial accountability. The Jedi weren't victims, they were accountants. And what looked like a tragedy was really just the galaxy's most aggressive early retirement package. This has been Canon Chaos, where galactic myth meets corporate fraud, and nothing says balance like a massacre that fixed the budget. Until next time, may the Force be lean, liquid, and fully deniable. Hashtag Order 66 was an inside job.